Talking Mariners with Yahoo Sports Jordan Shusterman joining us right now on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. Hi, Jordan.
Hey, guys. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I thought that we would start with a case that Bump was just making in our last segment before we brought you on. He was talking about, look, if you have to make a devil's advocate argument for Cal Raleigh as being an MVP, here's what you could say against Aaron Judge. And look, I know it's tough. What we're seeing from Aaron Judge is just unreal baseball. And I sure wish it was happening in any other season because what Cal's doing is special. But would you mind kind of not comparing the two, but kind of making the case if you had to make a tough case for Cal Raleigh as an MVP-worthy candidate?
Yeah, I mean, it's both impossible because Judge is way ahead of everybody else, and justifiably so. But it's also simple. It's that he's a catcher, and catchers are not supposed to be hitting like this basically ever. And when as we've talked about Cal almost every week here this season about how he's able to impact the team in ways beyond hitting a bunch of home runs, that's just something that Aaron Judge is not doing, and that's fine. Aaron Judge is doing more than enough to still be so far ahead of everyone else offensively that he is, in all likelihood, if he stays healthy, going to win the award again, and he would deserve it. But yeah, I think it is true that I still don't think we will ever totally appreciate just how amazing it is for a catcher to be doing this offensively and really quantify how much of an impact a catcher has on the other side of the ball as well.
Yeah, Jordan, I go on rants every Wednesday where I just complain like an old man, and obviously Judge will win this thing and does deserve it, but my argument was that he plays at a Mickey Mouse Disneyland park, so it's easier for him to go yard when he's at home. But respect to Judge, man, I'm just playing with this dude. The Mariners, they're at a place right now, Jordan, where every fan was just holding on to their pearls, hoping that we wouldn't see this type of play. And you know, us doing a radio show every day, we got to react. We're still telling people, look, there's still some time left. If you were a Mariners fan here in Seattle, what's your panic like right now? Or is there any panic at all from you?
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel like where they are at this season so far. I just wrote when I did my power rankings this week, and I had them, comfortably in the top half. But for each team, I kind of assessed how am I feeling about the team now relative to the start of the season, and from the spectrum of a lot better to a lot worse, and somewhere in between. And ultimately, I ended up putting Seattle right in the middle of about the same as the beginning. Now, it has been an unusual path to get to this point because it has been a little bit more balanced, as I wrote, for better or for worse. That the offense, until these last couple of days, has been way better than it's been in recent years, and the pitching has not been as good. And so you have a little bit more of a standard, like, you've got some good stuff going on offense, you've got some good stuff going on pitching, but it's not as obviously pitching forward the way it's been in years past. And I think that's part of why why fans are maybe getting more worried right now, is because you don't necessarily have the pitching to lean back on as the automatic superpower, right? And hopefully if Gilbert comes back and Miller can kind of find it and Kirby can kind of find it, that it could still turn into that. But that was something that even last year at the worst times, you still had maybe the best rotation in baseball, and you simply cannot say that with a straight face about them this year. And I think that makes them appear a little bit weaker, especially when their offense does go a little bit more quiet.
My question is going to be a standard Julio question, but just kind of hoping to put some of his season into context. And the reason I ask is Bump and I were, to begin the show, talking about what's going wrong for the Mariners. And we were like, well, your hot bats are cooling at the same time outside of Cal Raleigh. And then in terms of, well, what needs to change, what can happen, I don't always have faith that this club is going to make a really impactful addition. I know that more recently at the trade deadline they've done that, but they're not a big spender, and they don't love taking big risks, and they typically do look internally to improve. And for me, if I'm not looking outside to improve, and if I have to look internally, it feels like the top target has to be Julio. Like, the single biggest step forward you could take is within this person's potential. So I guess I wanted to ask you, like, what have you seen so far? Do you see that potentially blooming anywhere?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, we know that he does have the highest ceiling on the team. I mean, I guess Cal has sort of questioned that notion with the season that he's had, but I still stand by it with how good we've seen Julio go over certain stretches early in his career. So I think that's a fair one to say. I mean, there's certainly a conversation to be had if we are going to focus on it internally. You know, we've seen Cole Young get called up. I know Harry Ford, some really good stuff written about Harry Ford this week. I think he's a very interesting part of the conversation, not as obvious about how he fits on the roster, and I think that's an interesting conversation. But if there are other avenues to improve internally, I think he's someone to definitely consider. But yeah, I mean, when Julio's going, there's not a lot like it in the sport, and so you're kind of hoping that a hot streak like that is coming around the corner at some point. At the same time, I am cautiously optimistic that there is going to be a pretty major trade made at some point in the next month and a half. I don't know what it's going to look like. We're still kind of waiting for those sellers to emerge. I think they are going to want to be aggressive. I think they are going to be aggressive via trade. I think we saw it with Luis Castillo. Now it's a little bit different. Could you say at that point, you know, they viewed it as an is this the same kind of team that is worth going all in on? In some ways, yes, because the division is weaker. And even though there are still some flaws with this team, this still appears to be as vulnerable of a division as they've really kind of come up against. And while I know Houston just passed them, I think picking Houston is still very reasonable because you pick Houston until you don't. There is a window here to win the division for the first time since 2001, and I think the organization and the front office is going to act accordingly.
What else kind of makes you think that they might do that? Because I know that some fans are not cautiously optimistic that they're going to make a move. Is it recent trends? Is it interviews that they've done? Just the reality of the situation they're in with the AL West? What all are the pieces that you're seeing?
It's all those things that you're saying, and then the fact that they have one of, if not the best farm systems in baseball. That combined with picking third in the draft upcoming in July, which is just an amazing outcome for a farm system that certainly didn't necessarily need a boost, but you get that lottery luck. You're going to add another top pick there, maybe a couple of top prospects, and not just the fact that th're picking high and are going to maybe have access to a top level talent that they normally don't when they're picking a little bit lower down. It's how many times they've hit on these guys. And so I think while it's hard, you know, the one side of when you develop all these prospects is that you want to hold them close, right? You want to hug those prospects and keep them forever and see them flourish and become homegrown stars. But the other thing those hit rates kind of gives you is the confidence that you can do it again, is the feeling that we are going to draft another awesome class, some of whom are going to maybe pop really fast as late blooming college guys like Logan Evans or Ben Williamson and suddenly be in the big leagues, or high schoolers that can kind of surge in the lower minors and become top prospects in baseball. The Mariners have done that across the board at a lot of levels of the organization now. Now we're starting to see with Cole Young, maybe Harry Ford, how much they're going to help in the big leagues. But all that point is to say, as it relates to trade, they have a lot to trade. And I think that they're going to be confident that they can replenish that maybe as soon as this summer. And then whoever that next wave of guys are that we haven't even heard about that are at the lower levels of the minors.
Man, one of the things I love about baseball is that you get to see debuts more in baseball than any other sport, right? It's a beautiful thing to watch. They did this whole video with Cole, and it was awesome. But then reality hits. Then it's like, well, they're still young. They still have to go through their ups and downs. So in a short little snapshot of what you've seen from Cole, I know he hasn't done much. Did have a little walk-off there. What have you seen? What do you like? What don't you like?
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and there is nothing quite like that major league debut, and for Cole Young to end up having that be his first game is pretty remarkable. But it is, whatever. We're talking about a handful of games. I think it is clear that he was making very real adjustments in AAA. Did not start off great. Has kind of found really. I mean, this is about as hot as we've seen Cole Young at any point in his professional career, which is pretty exciting. But there's going to be an adjustment period, and that's the same thing when I bring up Harry Ford again. It's not as simple as copying and pasting his AAA stats and saying, oh great, why isn't that in the big leagues? You just know it's not that simple. And really that is one of the next great big tests of this Mariners front office and infrastructure and operation, which is just, okay, Cal Raleigh, undeniable massive developmental win, and a lot of the stuff that we've seen on the mound has been that. But who is going to be that next hitter, that next homegrown hitter to really settle in as an everyday player? I think that is one of the biggest questions this organization has faced. A lot of candidates, right? Cole Young's right there, Harry Ford's right there, and then a ton of guys beyond them. Whether we see them this year or not, or if they get traded, we'll see. Let's give Cole Young a few weeks. I hope he keeps getting those opportunities. I hope he keeps getting that playing time and to see what he can do.
When could the market start to move? with trades? I know that sometimes it's really, really late, but Jordan, with you keeping your eye on MLB as a whole, do you see anything shaking up sooner than expected?
I mean, I think we're starting to get there. I think that the fact that, Jeff Passan just wrote his big trade deadline preview is not an accident. The fact that we started to see the Dodgers be a little bit active there, I know they made a minor deal with Seattle, also acquiring Alexis Diaz. I think teams, even though it's still too early to determine who's totally out of it, and ultimately the teams that are obviously sellers are not necessarily going to jump right now at any offer that they're being given. I think we're going to start to see some stuff. Now, generally, listen, these front offices are procrastinators like the rest of us. And I think, too, another reality of how front offices deal with it this time of year is now that the draft is later, a lot of them are focused on that. And that is not to say that they can't execute, trades before then. But front offices have been very open and have spoken about this since they made this change, that it is harder to do all these things at the same time. And that's why you kind of haven't seen the trade activity pick up until after the All-Star, after the draft. So we'll see. I do expect we'll have a couple more June trades, but the standings are still too kind of clumped together right now to really see too much major action, I would imagine.
Hey, we saw a little bit of George Kirby before he took a baseball off the dome at 107. What'd you see from Kirby?
Yeah, that's another one where I think we're still kind to see where his command has been at. He's throwing a good number of strikes, but clearly there's going to be an adjustment period with him here, and unfortunate freak injuries like we just saw the other day. Like, that's not helpful in him kind of trending and getting comfortable to get back out there. So I don't know. It's a little bit concerning. I think you got to kind of give him a little bit of a longer leash. We've only seen a few outings from him, but it just goes back to my larger point, right? I mean, this rotation was just so reliable, just 1 through 5 last season and really the last few years, that you just kind of have to start accepting that you're kind of living more in the world of the rest of the league, where there's really only a couple days where you feel awesome. And you got to give credit to Luis Castillo. He's really started to look better, and at a time when they've really needed him. We know Brian Woo's been marvelous, but it's so important. And that's also still a credit to Seattle to have that many other guys to turn to, because there are some other situations where if you have Logan Gilbert and George Kirby out, it's like total panic mode and you have nothing else to turn to. You're throwing AAA starters out there all the time. That's not the case for Seattle right now. So there's still an okay spot. Going to have to be patient with Kirby, I think.
Jorge Polanco started the season so hot, 10 home runs, but the last was May 12th, right? And then the vast majority of those in March and April, obviously. Is what we're seeing from Polanco, that's a regression to who he is, or do you think this is maybe an injury-related slump? What's your feeling?
That's a great question. I mean, it's hard to say, this is injury related when he was still injured when he was hitting homers every day. So I don't really know what to make of that, but his health and durability and physical capabilities is very relevant, because that's impacting whether he can hit right-handed. That's impacting how much they want comfortable, playing him in the field. I do think the fact that he's still hitting second is kind of absurd. I don't really. This is a long enough stretch of struggles that, okay, don't bench him, but you have other hitters that are hitting well, including an MVP candidate. We got to be getting him more at-bats. It's really not that complicated, even if you move Julio back up. JP's been pretty solid back in his leadoff role, so that's been frustrating to see Polanco amidst the struggles. I know when you have that hot of a stretch, you kind of earn that credibility, but that's a basic. I don't usually freak out about lineups too much, but that's a pretty basic one that I don't totally understand, is giving Polanco more at-bats than Cal Raleigh at this stage. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
All right, he is Yahoo Sports Jordan Shusterman. Tell us what to keep an eye out for, not just with Yahoo Sports, but also Baseball Barbecast.
Yeah, so we recorded today kind of previewing the All-Star ballots, which were released today. Now, it's still a little early to talk about All-Star, but of course, if you want some more Cal Raleigh chat there, we go through all the positions and give our picks for the starters at this stage. Of course, still a month out, but I know people have strong feelings about All-Star starting. And then I just have to mention, because this weekend and tonight is softball, college softball. The Women's College World Series Championship Series is tonight. Super excited about that. I encourage everyone to check out Texas and Texas Tech. And then the Division I baseball Super Regionals is starting this weekend as well. Very, very fun time of year to get into watching these college.
Hold on, Jordan. Let me ask you one thing about the softball deal. How do you feel about the way Texas Tech is building their squad over there?
Oh, it's incredible. I love it. I think the fact that they, yeah, absolutely. Give Nyjah Kennedy $5 million. I don't care if she's going to carry you to the World Series. It's $1,000,000% worth it. You bring in an awesome coach like Jerry Glasgow. For them to turn it around this quick, it is not just a story of. And by the way, good. This is a sport I'd love to see more investment in. We don't need to keep throwing millions around in college football and college basketball. Let's get these athletes more attention, especially when they immediately deliver on the hype and expectation that kind of come with that kind of attention.
Crazy run.
Jordan, you're the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan.